So when you start to consider shooting in manual mode, the first thing that you're going to want to understand is f-stops. And f-stops are simply the size of the hole of the opening going through the lens. Let me just basically show you what I mean. When I go like this, I can change the size of the opening. Now this is a really tiny opening all the way to a very big opening. It only makes sense that the bigger the opening, the more light comes in, right? So that means that if you shrink down this opening, you're going to have a slower shutter speed in order to compensate for the little light that goes in, because you're not going to have much light coming in the hole, so you need that shutter open longer to let more of the light in. On the other hand, if you have a more open hole, you can increase your shutter speed in proportion. So basically what happens is, I'll show you, this is f22. The larger the number, the smaller the hole. Okay, 1/1000th of a second, f1.4. And you can see the background is extremely blurry. I'm going to take the camera and put it on very, very closed aperture. So you see right here, I'm slowing down the shutter speed and it's getting more overexposed. Okay, so we are going to go over to the aperture, and you see now I'm closing it down to, let's try this one. We'll say something like f6.3, 1/50th of a second. I'll take a shot like that. And you're starting to see more of the background. Now let's take it all the way down to f22. Wheel this thing all the way down to f22. And that means our shutter speed, we're going to adjust until we get it to look pretty good. Now watch what happens when I take the shot like this. Very, very clearly the monitor. You can actually see my name in the monitor and everything in the room. And when I go back, this is at f6.3, and this right here is at f1.4. So 1.4, 6.3, which is actually 5, 6.5, and 22. So let's review. The aperture is very, very small here. The pupil is very constricted, and it shows you the foreground and the background in focus. As we open up that pupil, the aperture, to a smaller number, f6.3 versus f22, I'm starting to see a blurry background, and when I open it all the way to f1.4, I'm seeing a completely blurred out background. Now you'll notice that the exposure on the camera remains the same throughout these three images, and the reason why that occurred was because I changed the shutter speed. Therefore, 1/1000 at f1.4 is the same exposure value as 1/50th at f6.3, or like 1/4 of a second at f22. Those are all the same camera exposures. You'll notice that the shutter speed is slow and the opening is small. Shutter speed is very fast and the opening is large. And those are the things that you want to keep into consideration. Obviously, if you're shooting sports and you want to have things in the background in focus, you're going to want to close that iris down to a very, very small opening. However, you're going to have a slow shutter speed, which could mean camera movement. This is the reason why when your camera is shooting on program mode, it typically tends to pick the safe range, something like this, 1/50th at f6.3. This is the reason why you want to take over the controls of your camera when you're shooting manual, to be able to give you that much more of an artistic expression. Okay, hope this helps.